All right, and we are live. So let me go ahead and share the screen and we will jump right into it. So welcome, we are here in lesson 3, day 3 of this masterclass, the consistency masterclass, right? Oh, hold on, I'm getting some feedback there. Where is that coming from? Want to make sure I turn that off. All right. We don't want that. So, yep, I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to review, just go over a quick overview of what we talked about yesterday, and then we will proceed with today's lesson. So, let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm just going to make sure all systems are go on my other screen here, looking at my phone, and then we will jump right into it. So, anyway, look. One of the major parts of even beginning to see results is showing up. So if you've been here, if you've been watching, showing up is one of the most important aspects of actually being able to see progress. You can have all the information, the best coach, all of that. But if you do not actually have the ability to show up, if you're not showing up, you're not going to get the results. Simple as that. Anyway, so here we are in lesson 3, the fitness consistency blueprint, putting it all together. So having information scattered all over the place, yes, like I said, having all the information, wonderful, but that does not actually mean you're going to get results if you're not actually applying the information that you're getting here, right? So hopping on over here. So the recap from lesson 1 and 2, right? So lesson 1 and 2, what we talked about, basically knowing what kind of learner you are, right? Understanding, how do I actually learn? If I know how to do it, well, is that enough for me to take action? If I know why I'm doing it, is that enough for me to take action? Is what if I don't take action? Will that motivate me enough to take action? So all these things are important to identify, and that's why if you did not go through lesson 1, make sure you do that. Go through lesson 1, because it's not going to make sense to you being here in lesson 3 and it's kind of like, well, yeah, like this is all good. This is good information. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know why. So go ahead and identify that. That is super important. And that is the recap from the first lesson. And then yesterday was your success path. So actually identifying like the journey along the way, which this was a diagram from yesterday. Where are you right now in your journey? Identifying those characteristics so you know what to do. You're not guessing, you're not doing random things. The more information you have about where you're starting, it makes it a lot easier, more predictable to know where you're going to end up by a certain time frame. So over here, structure, right? Structure, this was from yesterday as well. Structure, showing phases, breaking things down into phases so you know, where am I? You're not going to just look a certain way or perform a certain way by accident. And if you do, you're one of the very, very few and very, very lucky. That does not happen often. Having a structure that you can actually follow and identify where you are, so you're not wasting time. Like I said, I don't know about you, but I do not like to waste time. I like to know what I need to do first, like get started with momentum and then move into the next thing without missing major aspects, major sequences at the beginning, and just keep it going from there. So building the momentum from the beginning, it helps you maintain that motivation to get to the point where it actually becomes discipline, right? We're staying hydrated. So like I said, this is an example of structures, having structures, understanding what you're aiming for. What should your program or approach comprise of? This is what something like that would look like. So Irvin down there in the bottom right-hand corner is going to be taking the journey with us, and he's going to be staring at you and making sure you're accountable when you show up to every lesson, right? So there needs to be an order in correlation to what your goal is. And I talked about that yesterday at the end, and now we're moving into that, right? So there needs to be order. Once you have all all the ingredients, right? You're making a cake, you're making a pie, whatever. If you have all the ingredients, but if you don't put them in the right proportion sizes, it's not going to taste or come out how you want it to come out. So that's the same thing I want you to think about here. When it comes down to your fitness, your health and fitness, and remaining consistent, if you want a specific outcome, if you want that cake to taste a certain way, that you can't just throw everything in the bowl and then hope that it will bake itself. and come out how you want it to come out. So talking about the example that I gave yesterday, right? Just having and knowing what muscles the body comprises of, that's not enough. Like, okay, the legs. Now, how do I actually, what is the goal that I have for my legs? Do I want to build them? What part of my leg? Do I need to jump higher? Do I need to run further? So just knowing this information is not enough. Just knowing, okay, I have legs. Yes, these are the muscles of my legs. Okay, my core. These are the muscles of my core. Okay, back, chest, arms, shoulders, and so on. Knowing how to actually target these things, which I talked about and we're going to talk about in a second, the different planes of movement, and then in correlation to what your actual goal is. So if it's to build bigger legs, then specific movement patterns, okay, doing a squat, right? So that is a knee dominant movement. If you don't know what that is, you're going to have to go back over to lesson 2. We talked about that yesterday, lesson 2, and you're going to be able to identify, okay, that's what that movement pattern, that plane of motion is what targets this muscle group. But then actually knowing the rep range for that goal, knowing specific exercise modifications for that goal, all those things have to be taken into consideration as well. But what you need to know above all is your goal. So how are you sure you're targeting every muscle group? Knowing the planes of movement, which are as follows, right? I talked about this yesterday. Vertical, pulling, pushing, horizontal, pulling, pushing, rotary, and lateral movement, core. Hip dominant, knee dominant, legs, glutes, all of that, lower body, plantar dorsiflexion, which are also part of the legs, but those are the calves, right? So identifying those movement patterns, once you're incorporating all these movement patterns into your workouts, you're not missing any muscle group. So specifically doing calisthenics, that's where this is very important, right? Structural balance, I'm not going to say it's easy. It is if you don't understand the approach, but it is easy to end up creating structural imbalances when doing calisthenics when you're not incorporating all these movement patterns. If you just love doing push-ups, so you're on the ground all the time doing push-ups, guess what? You're going to start to develop kyphosis, which is a rolling over of the shoulders, and adaptive shortening will take place. And then you get that posture, that humpback look. You don't want to do that. Being able to balance it out by doing posterior chain workouts, which is horizontal pulling. Now you're not neglecting that posterior chain. You're hitting all the essential muscles of the back. You're not missing anything. So keep that in mind. And then if you're doing too many, like, okay, just doing squat movements, yes, you're hitting the major muscle group you're hitting when you're doing squats are your quads. But then what can begin to happen is you get overactive quads, then quad dominance starts to happen. And guess what? You start to get knee pain. So balancing that out by performing more glute muscle workouts, which is hip dominant. So getting on the floor and doing glute bridges, examples like that. So you get where I'm coming from as far as achieving structural balance. So like I said, this in this lesson is putting everything together. It might still seem to be a little bit far of a concept, but understand that your every movement pattern, different muscles are being targeted. And if you're hitting all these movement patterns that you see here, you'll never skip an actual muscle group. So you don't have to worry about, okay, am I actually hitting the right thing? Am I actually am I skipping any muscle group? Am I hitting every movement pattern? If you're following what you see here, these movement patterns, you're never going to skip anything, right? So at the very least, as a beginner getting into it, then you understand, all right, as long as I'm following these movement patterns, I don't have anything to worry about. But obviously, it's always there's always more to peel back. But at the very least, this is something you absolutely must know. So how to structure your workout week. So we're gonna get into that and ease into that. This lesson I want to be a little bit shorter because this is something that's very practical. You can go ahead and start putting this together immediately, right? So that's a bias to take action. Don't think too long. Just start doing and figuring out. Once you can structure your whole workout week, you have no excuse for not actually beginning your journey or continuing and taking it to the next level with a more scientific approach. So we don't guess, we do science, right? There is a science to properly structuring your workouts. There's foolproof ways to structure your workouts so that you're always achieving structural balance and consistent progress. Phenomenal. So we're already aware that doing random exercises with random rep ranges and random intensities will not get you the results you're looking for. I know we can all agree on that. Think about anything you're doing. If you're doing random, if your approach is random, yeah, it doesn't even have to be fitness. Just think about anything that you've tried to achieve. If you didn't have direction, think about how many things you quit, like you stop because you're like, I'm not seeing the result here. It is what it is. Like I quit, I throw in the towel. But how is it that so many other people can do this thing? And then when it comes to you, you think it's just a defect that you have, or something's wrong with the plan that someone gave to you. But no, you haven't even stayed the course to the point where you begin to see the like just a little smidgen of progress where you're like, okay, I got some belief here. This should at least allow me to take it to the next level to see if it was a fluke or I can really get this, right? The simple solution is to identify each of the movement patterns and divide your workouts into splits. So like I said, we're narrowing it down. I talked about the muscle groups and then the movement patterns. So with the muscle groups, we know what muscle groups are there. Then now we know how to target them with the different planes of movement, different movement patterns. Wonderful. Step one, remember, everything is in a sequence. You don't want to just start doing random movement patterns and then you're like, well, what muscles am I hitting? No, you understand what muscle groups there are and then what movement patterns are actually targeting these specific muscle groups. So you're like, okay, now let me narrow it down even further, right? So let me actually identify the rep range based on what my goal is. How many repetitions should I be doing? So a repetition is the amount of times that you perform an exercise. You go through the eccentric, concentric phase of a movement. So I'm just going to show you an example so you see and you won't have any question, right? So you're going to grab this band right here. Let me make sure this is closed. Security, right? So this is going to be 1 rep, right? 1. So I go from the through the concentric and isometric phase. So essentially, I'm just going to keep it simple. Up and down, right? Up and down. 1. You see? That's 1 rep. Now, if I did 5 of these, 2, 3, 4, 5, took a break. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, took a break. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, took a break. And I did that 3 times, right? I did that 3 times. That is a set. That's 3 sets. So it's multiple repetitions of the same of that exercise. And I did it for multiple times, like with rest in between. That is multiple sets. So first is reps, and then the reps go into sets. So rep range, based on your goal, the rep range will be different. You'll be utilizing a different rep range. If you're going for power, which as a beginner, you wouldn't just try and go straight into power. You would start with endurance. But if you're starting with power, it's anywhere from 1 rep, like 1 rep, maybe 2, maybe 3, right? And then when you're getting into strength, strength is anywhere from, I would say, from 5 up to 10, 5 to 10. That's where you're getting into strength. And then really anything above 10, 12, like up there, becomes endurance, right? So the numbers obviously is not like set in stone for each one, but just know that range. They're basically in a range. And endurance is really the first thing that we talked about yesterday that you want to begin any program with, even if you're a beginner. And I'm going to talk about why people who are seasoned towards the end of this, why people who are seasoned actually have to kind of have it worse off when trying to get back in to kind of where they fell off from. And it can be actually deadly, right? It's not common, but it is something that you need to be aware of, right? So yeah, let me just finish it, right? Rep range, variations, and intensities will be determined by your goal. So that is super important to pay attention to. The rep range will be determined by your goal. The variations will be determined by your goal, and intensity. And as far as, even before I move on, talking about how often should I work out? What really determines that is obviously, number one, paying attention to your fitness level, but the intensity of your workout. That's what will really determine. That's if all else fails, you always look at your intensity level. So if you're training super intensely, you don't want to do that every single day. You're going to get injured. You're going to overload your central nervous system. It just becomes too much. Your body breaks down. If the rate of muscle degradation surpasses that of repair, then you're going to end up in trouble. So yes, muscle breakdown is important. That's like the first step of hypertrophy, which is muscle building. But you don't want to, you don't, people think, oh, if I want to build muscle, I should just work out every single day, nonstop, no rest, like just keep going. As you become more seasoned, your rest, you don't have to take as much rest. But as a beginner, and depending on the intensity, even if you're not a beginner, if the intensity is super high, you can only do that for so long, right? And you have to scale back, let your body rebuild, and then sure, go back and return to that intensity level. So talked about, now I'm actually giving you specific exercises that actually target, that number one, I talked about the muscles, right? We talked about the muscles at the beginning. Then we talked about the movement patterns. Now I'm talking about actual exercises that you can identify that correlate with these movement patterns, and ultimately, obviously, those muscle groups that we talked about at the beginning. So horizontal push-pull, when it comes down to that, the horizontal push is a push-up. So horizontal plane, doing push-ups, horizontal pull, inverted. You could do inverted rows. I say inverted rows. That is kind of like a very similar variation to a pull-up, but doing rows like this in the horizontal plane as well, that can, like what I just demonstrated there, right? That would be an example. But rows in general, you're targeting those. You're not doing vertical pulling, but rowing. So rowing, you're pulling in the horizontal plane, right? So that's how you would target the posterior chain, which is the back. And then when it comes to vertical push and pull-ups would be vertical pull. But I have an example here. This is more advanced, but this is not the only way, right? This is handstand push-ups. But if you cannot obviously do handstand push-ups, is even doing band presses. So doing band presses, doing pike push-ups, things like that. That's how you're targeting the shoulders there, the shoulders, the back muscles. Rotational and lateral, we talked about that. This is rotational, this is lateral. So Russian twist, that's rotational, lateral crunches. So you're seeing, right, how you're able to correlate, number one, the muscles, the movement patterns, and actual exercises that tie into this. Hip and knee dominant. So hip, glute bridges, the movements initiated from the hip, and then squats, pivoting around the knee. That is hip and knee dominant. You're always going to hit these muscle groups, like I said, if you are following movement patterns. And then I didn't put dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, but calf raises, right? Dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, doing that, or even jogging, doing running in place. But really, one of the best exercises there are doing calf raises. So splits to focus on are simple, right? So splits, if you're doing a workout, and especially when it comes down to calisthenics, what I typically love to do, and you'll see at the bottom here, everything together. But let's say, for example, you have an injury. Let's say you have a specific goal to develop a specific area of your body, working on splits, doing isolation, working on splits or doing isolations. When it comes down to that, you can still do splits, but with the emphasis on something specific. So what I tend to do, right, I do full body with the emphasis on something specific. So I might do a bunch of burpees, muscle ups, and then I'm like, okay, but the main focus I need to save my energy for is legs. So I'm going to save a lot of my energy for the leg workout. And then after, if I want to continue doing what I was doing, then boom, great. All right. So I'm going to do full body, but I really want to emphasize on the back doing pull-ups and muscle ups. So I'm going to save my energy. I'm not going to do too much of a specific exercise that will drain me before I get there. So some good splits are push and pull to create structural balance. What I put here is really putting like structural balance, achieving structural balance. So push and pull, when it comes down to that, as I talked about, push-ups, pull, vertical or horizontal pulling, but just trying to get the opposing muscle groups, right? I don't want to get too scientific, but maybe you heard of the protagonist, antagonist muscle groups. So when the simplest way to put it, I'm just going to leave it like that, right? Because otherwise we're going to go down a rabbit hole. And that's why I put slides together. And people come sometimes they're like, Irvin, keep it simple, keep it simple. We'll have something more advanced a different time. And that's the purpose of this, right? Is keeping it simple. So push and pull. That's a good split right there. You can put a workout together where you're doing pushing and pulling, and that's the workout for the day. Upper and lower. So you might do jump squats with some push-ups or rows or something. So upper and lower. That's another split you can do right there. Straight arm, bent arm. So this is more so coming into like advanced movements, but not necessarily exclusive to it. But if you're doing planches, for example, that straight arm strength, doing like planches and things like that. And then, for example, bent arm, let's see, bent arm. I'm so accustomed to just doing straight arm strength exercise, but doing, let's say, like tuck planches. So tuck planches or pseudo push-ups, you're developing bent arm strength that way. So it's kind of one and the same, but straight arm strength really helps with achieving these advanced movements, doing human flags, doing handstands, doing planches, doing these more advanced movements, but also it correlates into just helping you with basic things. So straight arm strength is very important, which a lot of people do neglect. When they're doing like pull-ups, they don't go through full range of motion. And I'm not talking about snapping out the joints. That's a totally different story. Everything should be controlled. Otherwise, you shouldn't go full range of motion if you can't achieve, if you can't let your joints lock out progressively and not snap, because that's going to develop some tendonitis or tendinopathy, and you don't want that. Trust me, take it from me, you don't want that. So then coming down here towards the bottom, push, pull, legs, there's so many different splits. So looking at the different planes of motion, and then you can mix them together, and as long as it's achieving structural balance, that's really what you want to pay attention to. So if you're doing legs, for example, legs, you don't want to just do quad dominant, which is knee dominant exercises. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting knee pain and things like that. You want to make sure, okay, if I'm doing this, I want structural balance. If I'm doing one muscle group, the opposing one needs to be targeted as well. And then ultimately, you can throw these things all together and do what I described earlier. You wouldn't be, and this is very important, goal setting. You wouldn't be in this stage until you've identified your goal. Remember that. You need to know what you're actually trying to achieve. And like I talked about yesterday, you don't have to say, I want to lose 20 pounds by next month. Goals more so, especially if you haven't got to the level where you're disciplined, just start with goals like, okay, I'm going to work out for 15 minutes 3 times a week for the next 30 days. And I'm going to keep track of that. For the next 30 days, I'm going to aim to work out 3 days a week. That's something that you can absolutely keep track of. And it's not so complex in your mind as far as like, I've never been on this journey before. It's very intimidating to lose 20 pounds. What if I gain weight? Then I throw in the towel. It's like, I give up. But something like that, you're like, okay, I have 7 days out of the week, 3 days. Okay, I missed 1 day. I still have, more days to make up before I totally didn't do anything this week, right? So that will predict exactly how you set up how to use these splits, right? You'll be well on your way to leveling up once you understand how important this is. And I think you're seeing that already, to be honest. I think you're seeing that already. The complex approach is rarely the best approach. So in this day and age where social media is, everyone is on social media, right? Or to some degree, you're seeing something, whether it's on YouTube, on the TV, and we see all these fancy workouts. And yes, I do a lot of fancy workouts, but, and honestly, that's what grabs people's attention, but that's also to a degree misleading if you don't understand, right? So some people think that is the only way to achieve fitness. That if I'm not doing that, then my workouts are a waste of time. No, that could not be further from the truth. It is absolutely false. I've been recording videos all day. Sorry, so I don't want to lose my voice. The complex approach, that is not always the best approach, and it rarely is the best approach. Now, allow me to actually back up what I'm saying here, right? When starting calisthenics, many tend to think they need to be performing complex and extreme exercises in order for the result to be sustainable, right? Substantial. Sorry, like I said, I've been recording videos all day and I'm like, I know that's not what it said, right? Substantial. That is false. That is absolutely false. That is not the case, right? And let's put that on mute. I thought I had it on do not disturb. So yes, that it doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be complex. Here's what I say, right? As far as the approach that will always give you results no matter what, the basic approach will always give you results no matter what. Now you can get better and improve with complex results, but not in every case will the complex approach give you better results, especially if you're neglecting the basics, right? There's so much power in doing the basics that if you're neglecting that, you're setting yourself up for failure overall. But I'm talking about things like injury, plateauing. There's just so much that you're neglecting when you're not doing the basics. So I'm going to read this again. When starting, especially calisthenics, many tend to think they need to be performing complex, all these fancy, like, oh, challenge, do this, complex and extreme exercises. I challenge 30 people to do this. I bet you can't do it. And it's like, oh man, I better stop working out if I'm not doing this. And extreme exercises in order for the result to be substantial. I have my phone on do not disturb and it's still going off. For it to be substantial, that is false. So I just want to reiterate that. Simple. When in doubt, keep it simple. The technique that will allow you to see consistent and recognizable progress is keeping it basic, like I just explained. The push-up, pull-up, and if you can't do these specific exercises in the way that you see them demonstrated on YouTube and the TV and social media, remember there are modifications and variations for every single exercise. So being able to build up to your first pull-up, you shouldn't just try and jump on a bar and keep doing pull-ups, or attempting to do them over and over again. It's not going to happen. You're going to get injured and you're just never going to get to your first rep. You can't say, okay, I feel like today I'm going to be a little bit stronger. Let me jump on up and try. It doesn't work like that. You have to progress into these things and do the variations that you're able to achieve, that you're able to do before you're able to achieve these bigger movements, right? So you get what I'm saying now. So when I say that these are more of the basic exercises in comparison to doing a planche or human flag or handstand clap. So the push-up, right, the pull-up, squat, etc., are simple yet essential exercises and there are even exercises that are simpler than this, right? Exercises that absolutely should not be ignored. Even at the most advanced level, you'd be a fool. Yes, you would be, to omit these exercises from your training structure. No matter what level you're at, you should still be incorporating the basics. So no one is exempt from doing the basics. While progressions are necessary for growth, basic exercises should be strategically implemented into your programming. So that's why you don't get intimidated and think you have to jump in and go crazy and do the most complex, advanced, crazy things as you start a program. And anything that you see that looks too hard to achieve, there's always a modification that you can do that is for your level. So if you can't do a pull-up, doing pull downs or squat pulls or inverted rows, there are so many variations that you can do to be able to achieve these more advanced movements. After completing a periodic training program, you should be able to identify your rate of progress or lack thereof. Training structure is so important. If a program is structured in a certain way, and then based on you collecting your baseline data, okay, I should be able to do around this by this time, and based on what this program says, yes, I should. If you're nowhere near that, then you could look at the program and identify, okay, where did I go wrong? Always come back to the basics. Those who are most prone to injury are detrained individuals who jump back into training after taking time off. And now this is what I was referring to, right? I was talking about this because and I'm talking to myself here right now, right? Just because you've achieved amazing feats of fitness prior, that doesn't mean, and let's say you haven't trained at that level for a while, and it's hard to maintain that high level of fitness. It is, you can't do it forever. You might still be in better shape than most people, the general population, being at an elite level for a long period of time. Your body's not designed to consistently go through that stress for years and years and years, right? So people, like, mentally, yes, you're like, I got this. Mentally, I'm prepared. I'm ready. I got this. But physiologically, your body is not ready to get back into that level. And I'm talking to myself. Why? Because a couple weeks ago, I went to the gym and I'm like, oh, let me squat. This is lightweight for me. And then I ended up messing up my back. Right. And that's how it happens. That's how it happens. And it happened again because I'm like, man, I'm at an elite level. Like, there's no way I can't do something like this. This is basic in my head. To the general population, no, it's not basic. But to me, I'm like, this is basic. And I ended up getting injured. Couldn't even like stand up straight, couldn't sleep properly. And even right now, as I am right now, it's kind of like it's still tweaking and messing up a little bit. I probably need to go and get some deep tissue work. Recovery, it's equally important, or I wouldn't even say it's equal. It's more important than the actual workout, being able to recover. That for a totally different topic, but keep that in mind. Don't get sucked into the hype of, if I'm not going hard every single day, then I'm not making progress. No, you need to make sure that your body's recovering. The stimulus, yes, is the workout, putting your body through like the push-ups, the pull-ups, the squats, the jump squats. That is a stimulus, but the actual strength and recovery happens when the actual strength building happens when you're in recovery mode. So it is important to do that. This is more, yes, like I said, this is more of a psychological trick when it comes to those who were previously active. And I just mentioned that. It's like, yeah, I know I got this. I've done this so many times before. There's no way I can't do it now. They know what they're capable of and tend to try to return to the same level of intensity once starting back. So the first workout back in is like the one that they left when they were at their peak, at their prime. For these individuals, the first few weeks back are the most critical. It is so critical to ease your way back into this. And once you get back and like the body remembers, it's like, okay, great, we're good. And then boom, you can go all in. Right. So DOMS, and I did a video on DOMS. If you've never seen it, I do recommend checking it out. It's on my YouTube. If you just go to my YouTube and type in DOMS, then you will see it. But DOMS, what is DOMS? DOMS is delayed onset muscle soreness. So when you feel like you did a workout, when you feel like, oh man, I can barely move. What's going on? That is DOMS. So you don't feel it at the moment of the workout, but depending on how intense the workout is, 2, 3 days, 3, 4, 5 days, sometimes a week after, which we're going to talk about that in a second. When it starts to extend that long, there's a problem. DOM should not be like a whole week long. But yes, remember, exercise is, it's, how do I put it? Basically, it's exercise-induced injury, right? You're injuring yourself. Micro trauma. It's not like a deep. It can get to that point, but generally speaking, when you feel the soreness, it shouldn't exceed like on the pain scale. It shouldn't be on a 10, right? It shouldn't be where you're immobile and not able to move, because then you're getting into some trouble. And I kind of teetered into that a few years back when I was training super hard, not taking care of like the actual health aspect of it, not drinking enough water. And the doctor was like, oh man, no, you got to start drinking water, man. You got to get back on the health first, right? So shout out to that doctor, right? By doing too much too quickly, DOMS is usually extreme, and the development of rhabdomyolysis, right? Kind of big word there, rhabdomyolysis. And basically, what is that, right? This can ultimately kill you if it goes untreated. It could damage your kidneys and things like this. And that happens to people who take a lot of time off, come back in, jump back in, go as hard as they can. And when you experience extreme pain, that's where you're teetering on the side of actually being in a possibly fatal state if not taken care of. Now, it's very rare. It's not like likely that it will happen. But I just want you to be aware of how important it is to not push yourself too hard. Take the basic approach, no matter what level you're at as you're starting. Take the basic approach. You're erring on the side of safety and long term. You're not in a sprint. This is a lifestyle. Even if you're an athlete, if you're getting into a health conflict, then obviously something needs to change. So yes, I'm going to start from the beginning. By doing too much too quickly, DOMS is usually extreme, and the development of rhabdomyolysis becomes a real possibility. If the intensity is ramped up too quickly with certain types of exercise, so especially as it comes to doing a lot of high volume, you're doing a lot of high volume, whether it be push-ups, pull-ups with additional resistance, and you're pushing yourself that hard that early on, it's gonna be pain for you, right? Please keep in mind, rhabdomyolysis is a life-threatening condition, obviously, if it goes untreated. So look that up as well. Take a look of what that is. There's videos that you can indulge in and get a little bit more information from that, right? The best way to minimize or avoid altogether the potential of experiencing rhabdomyolysis is to maintain a low level of intensity for the first 30 days or so of returning to training. Know what you're going to do before you do it. So adhere to the warning I gave you about jumping in too quickly, but that's why knowing what your goal is and understanding what fitness level you're at, which you would have learned in lesson 1 and 2, you're able to identify these things. You're like, okay, I shouldn't be pushing myself too hard. I should be focusing on endurance with basic modification exercises. All right, great, check. Good. Now I'm not going to end up running into something like rhabdomyolysis or extreme DOMS and all these things. Keep that in mind. Random workouts won't get you a specific goal. So we started with this and we're coming back to this. You have to have structure. So I'm actually going to show you, we're going to put this into a actual workout program, what I showed, or a day, a workout day, right? And then I'll show you like a week and so on and so on. So it's first going to be written out, then I'll show you like in a professional structure setting what that actually looks like. So keep in mind, right? You have to be intentional when it comes down to your workouts. It cannot be random. It cannot be sporadic. You're not going to see the result. That's just how it goes. So this, for example, the goal here, and this is an actual program, strength cycle. And that's the goal of the workout, right? Is developing strength. And overall, I think like on a macro scale, the goal is strength, developing strength. Now mix in there will be a little bit of power. There will be a little bit of endurance, but focusing highly on developing strength. So the rep range, the exercise variations, that's what they would really be geared towards strength development. So the macro, when I say macro, is only for like macro for this day. So this is the week we're looking at. This is day 1 of that week. On the micro time frame, that would be this workout right here, which is we're focusing on pulling movements and vertical, horizontal. So we're focusing on pulling movements, and the actual movement plane, a vertical and horizontal. So you always start every workout with the warm up all the time. Always start with general. So you do, whether it's like jumping jacks, jogging, even if it's secondary, you take a hot shower, you're in a sauna, something like that, whatever. But warming up, doing a general warm up, and then focusing on the specific movement pattern for that day at a very, very light intensity. So even if you're doing, well, we're doing pull-ups, right? We're doing pulling movements. So even using a band, you can warm up with the band, or like body weight, just make sure the shoulders and the lats and teres muscles are warmed up. So you would start with that. So it's general, but then it comes down into general, but more specific. And then you do the mobility stuff just to make sure, look, we don't want to get injured. We always start with that. And then you can also do foam rolling, band work, body weight, dynamic. That's just all these examples of different warm-ups that you can do for that specific muscle group. Now, once we actually get into the workout, so we actually have it broken down here: vertical pull, weighted pull-ups, So we have weighted pull-ups, not just regular pull-ups. So weighted 5 reps, 4 sets, 115 pounds, right? So it's additional resistance. So making sure that the warm-up is intentional and you have and you're adequately warmed up. As you see at the beginning in the warm-up section, it says 20 body weight pull-ups. So even before jumping into the weighted, warming up, do 2 sets of that, not to burn out, but just to make sure that that muscle group is warmed up and adequate as far as the flexibility, the plasticity, everything of that muscle group is prepared for additional resistance. And then, we're doing isometric weighted pulls, and it breaks down even further. So talking about, okay, once it's isometric, remember isometric is creating muscle tension, but no movement. So you see it says 5-second hold, boom, 5-second hold, single arm iso negative. So isometrics paired with negatives. So the eccentric phase would be not slow and controlled. So keeping in mind, like I said, all this, it gets very complex if you just start going into like tempo and, all these things, but just follow along with what I'm saying here, right? You identify what muscle groups, then you go from the muscle groups to movement patterns, and based on your goal, what's the rep range? And then we put all these things in together to make a program like this. All that stuff that was scattered, it comes into a program like this. And then ultimately you achieve the goal based on doing these exercises. Horizontal pull, weighted inverted rows, and then so on. It continues the same. And when we're talking about iso negatives, and as well, the negative not written out here, but the same thing, 3-second iso, 3-second negatives, and then this is single arm. So when you're doing unilateral now, you usually want to save like unilateral exercises for the end of a workout. You start with bilateral, which is using both of your limbs, and then towards the end of a workout is when you begin to use more unilateral exercises. It just helps to make sure the body's warmed up. You don't end up running into a muscle that's still cold, and then you pull it, and then boom, you're in trouble. So now in an actual structure, like what I provide to my clients, as you see here, the calendar at a week view. Now, if you have a goal setting session with Irvin John, then that would be in your calendar. But you see, right? You're able to see, you need to know what you're doing before you actually do it. So it's like, okay, I don't have to try and think about it on the spot and then get overwhelmed and not do anything. So trigger point and stretching, right? Boom. Okay, I know I have to do that Tuesday at the time I can do it. Wednesday, okay, body weight, pure strength workout. And then we break down even further, what does it actually look like and whatnot. So, okay, boom, 150 push, jump. I think that's jumping. Oh, what is this? I don't know. I have like 30,000 workouts. But for example, jumps, I believe that is jumping jacks. Jumping jacks, there's just an example, right? Jumping jacks, 10 Muay Thai push-ups. And then, you see so on and so on, so on and so on. So knowing what you need to do before you actually do it, it saves you so much time. And that's how you begin to develop consistency, because when you have to figure out what you have to do on the spot, then you're like, okay, I don't have the energy to try and figure this out right now. I am not going to do it. And then that leads into one thing, and then the next and the next. And before you know it, you're not doing anything at all. And then it's the same approach when eating, right? Know what you're going to eat before you eat it. So you have a shopping list. You know what you need to eat based on what your goal is. What foods do I like? Okay, I like this. I write that all out. Okay, since I like all those foods, which ones are actually going to help me get to my goal? So what is the calorie content of each of these things? What is my calorie intake that I need to be taking to, what is it, lose weight or gain weight? What is my goal, right? Then you start to look at the qualities of the food. Fast-acting carbs, slow-acting carbs, fast-acting proteins, slow-acting proteins, simple carbohydrates. What's going to help me get to my goal? Maybe it's to get as shredded as can be. So, okay, I want to boost up my protein intake, make sure my strength training is up, and kind of maybe progressively decrease my carbohydrate intake. What do I actually need to eat to actually achieve that? You have a meal plan. You're able to look and see all those things from a bird's eye view, right? So very important, as we see how important it is to structure. I know you're understanding what it's like, how much of a burden would be lifted if you plan everything out ahead of time. And if you don't know how to actually do it, don't do nothing, right? Find the first step that you need to take. If you're here, you're identifying the first step. You see what the first step is that you need to take, right? That's great. So you shouldn't be stressed out. Yeah, finally starting and actually getting the swing of things. It could cause some stress, but actually having direction and knowing what comes first, that saves you a lot of stress, a lot of headache. So we're gonna wrap it up. Like I said, I want to keep this one short because I just want you to take action. I want you to take action. I want you to begin identifying, number one, what your goals were and tying in these workouts. Practical. What do you actually need to do to begin working towards that goal? And you have the framework, right? You understand, all right, okay, based on what my goal is, having the movement pattern, and how many workouts should you actually do, right? How many exercises? Now, obviously, depending on the intensity and the variations and whatnot, but more or less, I would say you don't want to do like more than 8 exercises, right? And if you're just targeting one muscle group, then 8, no, you don't need to do 8 for a single muscle group. So if you're doing one for each muscle, if you're doing full body, as a beginner, I would always say like 1 exercise per muscle group as you're beginning. So squats, you're hitting quads; glute bridge, you're hitting glutes; push-ups, you're hitting chest, you're hitting anterior; rows, you're hitting posterior; Russian twist, you're hitting the rotary movements; lateral, you're hitting the rectus abdominis, those muscles there. So just think about that. You do each of those is like 8 movement patterns. So if you're doing, okay, all I need to do is do 1 exercise per movement pattern. Boom, you got it. Then based on what your goal is, and then like you said, it gets complex. I want to shy away from going down the rabbit hole. But for muscle groups like your core and for your calves, for example, these are what's called HTMUs, right? High threshold motor unit muscles. So what it's required to do a lot more load, not a lot more load, but a lot more volume, higher repetitions to really develop these muscles. A lot more repetitions in addition to doing it with more resistance. So if you really want to develop muscles like that, that's just an example. Your calf muscles and muscles like the abdomen, the core, doing targeting muscles like that to really develop that. Those are HTMU. And there's also medium and low. So for the same HTMU, high threshold motor units, medium threshold motor units, and low threshold motor units. And low is more so like legs, quads, so you don't have to go as high with the repetitions. They'll grow rather quickly or rather easily in compared to high threshold motor units. So keep that in mind. Wrapping up for today, we will be back tomorrow, lesson 4, to review everything, right? Just review. If there's any questions, go through the questions, but reviewing everything, that's what's very important. Just to make sure it's like, don't become overwhelmed. Yes, back to back to back. There's a lot of information. So to catch up and just kind of put everything together, that will be the overview. And then we're going to wrap up this masterclass on the next day, whatever the next day. We're going to wrap it up then, and you'll be good to go. You will be good to go to take action, right? So keep that in mind. And I do have a very, very special offer. Like I said, I'm giving the free stuff that you guys got. They will be coming out tomorrow. You'll be getting that tomorrow. So the free stuff that do come with this, you are getting that tomorrow. So make sure you hop in here so you know how to actually get it. So yes, that is it for now. Thank you for watching. And look, we're here to take action. Don't just come here to memorize. Come here to actually learn and apply. So that's the purpose of being here, learning and applying. We're having a bias towards taking action. We're taking action. Things aren't going, if you've been doing the same thing for years and years and years and years and years, there's no way that automatically, boom, as you go through something for the first time, you're going to get it. So keep that in mind. It's going to be a lot of work. But once you actually get the stick, your life will change. And I know you believe that. I know you believe that. It's just getting to the point where you're actually able to become consistent enough to see it for yourself. So thank you for watching. I will see y'all in the next lesson.